think by the time I auditioned for my doctorate, I definitely played it differently because I've studied how he put it together. How did he construct it? He wasn't just writing willy-nilly, you know. It's so perfectly written, and the structure, it's like a building that the architecture is just so perfect.
Yeah.
You know. There we go.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was really excited when I saw your email. Professor Flavin had mentioned that he was interviewing for this really cool podcast in Vienna. And then I saw your email. I thought, oh, that's awesome. So, yeah.
Well, he was actually one who recommended you that I speak to you as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
very sweet.
So, but tell me, you are also a violinist?
Yeah, so I'm a violinist. I'm in the second year of my of the doctorate program here,
Yeah.
and I also work at the university as Professor Flavin's teaching assistant for starting this year.
Okay. So, if you say your second year doctorate, and what does what do you do in this study?
So it's a doctorate in musical arts, and it's a combination of recitals and classes. You can pick a minor called a cognate if you want. And you have well, technically it's an essay. I think if you get a PhD in music education, at the end you write a dissertation, which is usually hundreds of pages. For a performance doctorate, it's about half of that. So it's about, I think, usually around 100 pages. That's a little bit of the difference between the degrees, but so yeah.
But now I'm asking this as a non-musician. I'm thinking now for musicians, it's so, I mean, of course, it's important that how you play and so on. So if you have a doctorate and you have to write now, say 100 pages, is this easy for you to express yourself in words? Because you used to express yourself through music.
Yeah, so I think for me the writing part of it still feels expressive because I'm basically writing, ideally you're writing about things that you're thinking about in the music, and it helps to inform how I'm going to express what I'm feeling. So for example, I have a paper due on Bach, and I'm analyzing the first movement of the A minor sonata that he wrote from the six solo partitas and sonatas that he wrote for violin. And so I'm analyzing the first movement, and I have to write about an analysis paper. So what does that mean? I have to analyze how he put it together, and then I have to talk about how that informs how I play it.
Okay.
So I have to look at it very methodically, but the way that he put it might change how loud I play a certain spot in the music, or what emotion I feel like he might be trying to convey with a certain passage. And so looking at it at an analytical viewpoint hopefully informs your interpretation of what he wanted, because it's not just about me, it's not just my emotions, it's what the composer wanted.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing, so.
Yeah, but then now, so do you play then differently after you've analyzed it? Do you think it changes how you play the music then after thinking and writing about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, the solo sonatas and partitas that Bach wrote for violin, there's 6 of them. And a lot of people, he also wrote some solo music for cello, and for cellists, violinists, it's these are pieces of music that we typically grow old with. You know, like you play them your whole lifetime, and they might change. Yo-Yo Ma recorded the Bach cello suites, I think, 3 different times over the course of his life. And so I think when I was younger, so for example, one of the other sonatas, the G minor sonata, the very first movement in the fugue, I used for my undergraduate auditions. I actually learned it in high school, and then I used it for my undergrad auditions, and then I used it again, the same thing for my master's. And then I
Really?
used the same thing again for my doctoral
Yeah.
audition. And, you know, when I was younger, I was so emotional, and you're playing with, oh, I feel everything, you know? And, and then I think by the time I auditioned for my doctorate, I definitely played it differently because I've studied how he put it together.
Uh-huh.
How did he construct it? He wasn't just writing willy-nilly, you know, it's so perfectly written, and the structure, it's like a building that the architecture is just so
Amazing.
perfect,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I
So
must say I'm 56 and I'm still all emotional about everything. So
yeah.
maybe I should start writing theses or something to just to get myself out of it.
That's funny. Well, I mean, it's just, you know, when I was younger, I didn't really know a lot of music theory. I didn't really know the technical terms for how
Yeah.
things are put together. So, like, all I knew really was, oh, that minor chord makes me feel a certain way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't know the complexity of the theory that was
Yeah.
used and the counterpoint characteristics and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Well,
mhm.
that's makes sense to me anyway. So, but you know, I think it's, I think I hear when I hear you study these pieces. So, and like you say, you play it in different times in your life, and you do you then play it differently? Does it sound different when you hear it back?
Yeah, so there are certain, for example, there are certain cadences that I
Mm.
maybe played louder when I was younger because I would get to the end of the line and it felt like I should be really big and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And then maybe now that I've studied it, I might not impose my own emotions so much on it. Well,
Oh,
I
I see.
feel this way, so
Yeah.
I'm going to play this way. It's not about what I feel. Think as I've gotten older and I've looked at, okay, well, you know, he does this before the cadence, so maybe it's not supposed to be loud. Maybe I should go away from the cadence. You know, so instead of getting louder, maybe I should get softer, or oh look, he does this here, or whatever. And so I would like to think that my interpretation is more informed than it was when I was younger in terms of just I think it should be this way.
Yeah.
Well, what did Bach think? And then maybe it shouldn't be loud, maybe it should be soft.
Mhm.
You know, it's very
So what
subjective.
is, yeah, but what is it about Bach that fascinates you or that makes you so interested in playing the music?
Well, first, I think as a string player in general, because the violists, if violists learn both the stuff that Bach wrote for violin, and they also learn the cello suites, they, you know, can play both. Um, and I think as string players, it's kind of ingrained in us, not ingrained, but it's something that when you become an intermediate player, getting to an advanced level when you're young and you're a teenager, most teachers will have their students learn one of the easier movements of Bach. And so it's kind of ingrained in us at a early age, and it's part of the standard repertoire. I have all of my students, like there's a point when I have a student that they've progressed to the point, okay, they're ready for solo Bach, you know, and
Oh, I see. Okay. Mm.
yeah, and then from then on, um, you know, it stays with you. I mean, there's so much he wrote. To learn all 6 sonatas and partitas for violin that he wrote it takes many, many, many years to learn all of them, never mind going back and revisiting ones.
Really?
It's a lot of music, yeah.
Mhm. And now for you, if you now, so you are basically classically trained, do you also play contemporary works?
Yeah, I think as a violinist, these, in this age and time, I guess, it's pretty standard to you learn everything. So
Yeah.
you study the classics with your teacher, solo wise, but yeah, in terms of playing different time periods and genres, you typically study some Bach, you study the romantic concertos, but with your teacher as you get older. But ideally, you don't just study that. You also bring in some contemporary music. Ideally, you're probably playing an orchestra somewhere, either at the university or small jobs on the side or music festivals in the summer. And so you ideally get exposed not just to solo music that you're doing with your teacher that could be across different time periods, but also I've done a lot of contemporary music in orchestra and orchestral playing with composers that are still alive. But you can do that even in your solo playing. I think it's just we don't only play music from a couple hundred years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
you can play a piece from your friend that they composed yesterday,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
But I went to a concert recently. The group is called Flores and the Flames. Flames because they all have red hair, but they played. Uh, they took classical pieces and they just revamped them and made them so sort of uh, like you felt like you were at a rock concert or so. You know, they
oh,
really they had a bass guitar, and it was amazing how they did it. And it had that feeling, very young, very vibe, very young vibe feeling. And I sort of wondered, because I know the violin player, the violinist, he's here at the music university. And I wonder if the music students have this urge to just do it that way, to get out there and just play it in a different way, not in the exact classical way.
yeah, that's definitely true. I feel like the generation that's the generation older than myself, I was very, I think a lot of people, it was like you go to the university and you get your job and you sit in the orchestra and that's what you do for your entire career. And I think definitely now, I feel like starting around with uh, my generation and younger, people are starting to bend the boundaries of genre, what genre classical music is. And you definitely, yeah, you see a lot more people playing with bands, or they're
Yeah.
taking the violin into places that you would never traditionally think of it, in terms of taking it out of the concert hall into other,
Mm.
you know, other genres and places.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think it's a way of also reaching different audiences, you know?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a thing actually here in the US called Classical Revolution. And it started in California, and there's all these little chapters around the United States. And the whole goal of Classical Revolution is to take music out of the concert hall and into, like, bars and
Oh, yeah.
art galleries and anything else where you wouldn't normally expect to see classical instruments. And when I lived in Cleveland, Ohio for 8 years, there's a chapter there, and we played at the Happy Dog. It's like kind of a divey bar, and people would play classical music. They had an upright piano, but you could play whatever you wanted. It could be classical, it could not be classical. It was classically based because all the players are classical players. But if you want to play some contemporary piece, awesome. You want to, play a fiddle piece by yourself. That's if you want to play Beethoven, you could do it. And so it's usually classical musicians that are going into these, you know, different venues, and I think that
Yeah,
really
yeah.
speaks. Yeah, there's a bunch, and we started when I lived in St. Petersburg a couple years ago. We started a chapter there. There's in all these different cities in the United States, and it's very similar, I think, to what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
But is
Great
it
example.
so if you do your doctorate now and you study Bach, is it easy for you to say, hey, let's do Bach, just in a different way? Or is it for you difficult then to say, oh, I know what the composer wants, but I cannot play it in a different way?
I think no, I think taking Bach and reinventing it is awesome, and it's really cool. I've seen people do it. I think for me, like if I'm going to play Bach in a setting, in a traditional setting, I want to it's not even about playing it in a traditional way. I do fundamentally, whether I'm playing it in his style or adapting it for some really cool, four-piece band that I'm going to play with or something. Either way, I want to understand the structure. I want to understand how what he wrote and why.
Okay.
Whether or not I'm playing it in his style or some, an electric violin or something, the other side. I want to understand the architecture because it's fascinating and it's so beautiful all by itself.
Really? Mm. But now tell me, what made you play the violin? How did you start in music? How old were you?
I was 6. My dad is a middle school public school orchestra teacher, middle school in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And he was actually a band teacher, and then my family moved to Virginia Beach, and they didn't have any band jobs for him. So he said, "Well, if you'll learn violin and you'll teach orchestra, we'll give you a job." And so he switched from a band teacher to being an orchestra teacher. And so we started having violins around the house. And my older sister has always wanted to play violin her whole life. And so she started violin. And then of course the small one of the family, I want to play too. I started hearing all these string instruments around the house. And my mom's a pianist and she teaches general music, elementary music in the public schools. And so I was around when I was younger, and then I actually wanted to play harp. And my dad used to play with a volunteer orchestra in Virginia Beach. And he took me up on stage, and I was the height of a 6-year-old, and he walks me up to the harp, and I got so intimidated. It was, when you're 6 and you look at a harp, it's taller than you are.
Yeah.
My sister said to me, Kristin, a violin only has 4 strings. I was so intimidated by all the strings on the harp. So yeah, we were at a violin shop, and I guess I getting something for my sister's violin because she had already started. And I looked at the violin in the cabinet and asked my parents if I could play as well. And so they got me set up with a rental and lessons and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
and the harp, the urge to play the harp, was that buried then there?
I don't know. I think I just thought it was really pretty. I don't know what my 6-year-old saw. I just was really attracted to like maybe how grand it was, and then I'd never really seen one in person. And so when I saw it in person, I think it was a little overwhelming because it was much bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
I had only seen it from sitting in an audience or something.
But then now, when did it kick in with you that you want to be a professional musician?
I think, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have this point when they, like the light bulb goes off, they have some intense experience. I want to do this the rest of my life. And I think for me, I I grew up with it, and it was something I always felt successful with, and I loved doing it, and it just kind of made sense by the time I got to high school. You know, I did other things growing up. I was really into horseback riding. That was a really
Okay.
big thing, and I did a lot of surfing in high school. I got really into surfing for a while. And so I did other things, but violin is just it's what always made sense. I went to a math and science academy, and I remember the day I was sitting there thinking like, I don't want to crunch numbers for a living. So I think I knew what I didn't want to do,
Yeah.
and I knew that I really loved violin. I don't know if I ever really questioned it. I just kind of
Mhm.
always thought I would go to university for violin. I never,
Mhm.
it wasn't like a distinct decision I had.
Okay. Now you're studying, but you're also doing concerts, and or are you part also of an orchestra?
Yeah, so uh for me, I guess my path has been a little different. Most people, when you do your bachelor's and you do your undergrad, you're just studying. Some people are, play some gigs and jobs on the side. For me, I didn't really freelance until I was in my early 20s and I was starting my master's. And then I was playing in some smaller regional orchestras. So regional orchestras typically have, around 5, 6 concerts a year. It's not every weekend. And so I was playing with some of the regional orchestras while I was in my master's in Ohio. And then after that, I left and I played full time with the New World Symphony in Miami Beach.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't really play with other small orchestras because that was a full time deal. And then after that, I had a job working with the Florida Orchestra, and that was a full time job. And now that I'm back in school, I'm playing with um, the Palm Beach Symphony as a regional orchestra here in town. So now that I'm back in school and playing with some of the smaller regional orchestras again in the area, and I think that's pretty typical, especially as you get older and you're a master's or a doctoral student, to be doing smaller things on the outside. But obviously, you can't really do a
Yeah.
full time job while you're in
Of
orchestra
course.
while you're in school.
Yeah, and you're teaching as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I teach as Professor Flavin's TA, so I
Yeah.
teach some of the students here. I make sure that everyone's doing their scales and etudes and um, really making sure the fundamentals are being practiced regularly. And then I've spent there's a method called Suzuki. I don't know if
Oh,
that's
yeah,
familiar.
I heard of that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I was after I got my master's in Suzuki pedagogy as well. So I was certified. You have to be certified to be a traditional Suzuki teacher. You technically have to get certified, which I did in addition to my master's. And so right after school, I was a Suzuki teacher for 3 years or so on the side. And so I did that. I've done a lot of different kinds of teaching as well, I guess, which so I do teach, but I guess I feel like when I ask my friends like, hey, do you have any students? Like, or do you teach? Like it could mean anything. It could mean private lessons for
Really?
kids. It could mean
Yeah.
university, collegiate teaching. It could
Mm.
mean being a teacher. Could mean being a classroom teacher. You're teaching high school, middle school orchestra in a public school.
Mm.
Um,
But I
yeah.
mean, it's so important, the teaching, because I think it's, if you think of a young generation now, it's the teaching of the instruments is not just to do with the fact that they might become musicians, but also that they can appreciate the art. And I think, yeah, especially I know in America it's different. In different states, you have different uh, amounts of art being taught, or the art is the art education is so different. But what do you teach young children as well? Like beginners.
Yeah, so I've taught I've when I was a Suzuki teacher, I taught a lot of beginning young students. I've also taught a lot of classroom orchestra, so starting students from scratch who've never held an instrument before, but in a school classroom setting. Done a lot of beginners, started a lot of kids that way. But then I also am really grateful to also getting the experience as Professor Flavin's TA, because very different type of teaching when you teach. The older the student gets and the more serious they are about music, certain things don't change, but it's a little different. I think there's this idea sometimes when you're in university as a performance degree. I always felt like there was this thing around school where it's like, oh well, if you can't teach, you play. If you can't play, you teach. And
really,
and I went to a school that was pretty much only performance based. They didn't even offer education degrees. And I always felt like there was this thing like, oh, you're doing Suzuki pedagogy, like why are you wasting your time like with the teaching thing? And for me, I felt like the better I was getting at being a teacher, the better player I was, and the better player I was, the better teacher I was. I always felt like it was a cyclical.
But I think also now in the pandemic, during the pandemic, and all the students I photographed in their windows, for example, I understood how important the professors were for them, because it's amazing how they actually needed the support, and not just, I don't think on Zoom that you could have such a great teaching the instrument, but there was so much more that they got from their teachers, that I realized the importance of the art teachers or the music teacher for the students. So I think it's a misconception to say if you don't play, you teach, because I think it's really important. You have to be good at both.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the great teachers were great players, and I just feel like it's very. I have friends who have professional jobs in orchestras, and teaching just isn't their thing, and that's totally fine. That makes absolute sense. It's not for not everybody enjoys it, but I think to stereotype something and not do it for that reason. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. But I think that's the only real reason.
No, I totally agree with you. Do you have some sort of ritual before you play, before you do a concert?
Oh, before a concert? Ooh. Well, I think for me, the ritual, when you say the word ritual, the first thing that comes to mind for me is my morning ritual, or before I play my instrument. Just generally day to day. For me, if I don't warm up my scales and I need at least, I try 15, 20 minutes minimum a day of just slow scales, warming up my body, my arms, my hands. And I have a routine that I go through in my scales very methodically each morning. And there's changes to that, but that for me is the biggest routine. And then the day of a big performance, in whatever routine I've been doing, I've ingrained so much that the day of the performance, that's the routine I stick to, so that nothing changes the day of the performance. The day of the performance, I have it's almost like my body is trained so that I'm set up for success, because it's going to be the same way that it's been.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's understandable. And but normally when you're when you play in a orchestra, you normally sit down while you're playing. Yeah, because I spoke to a violinist and he actually said that shoes are so important for violinists, because you have to.
I can see that.
What? Really?
Yeah, I could see that. I think posture for string players is so important because there's a direct reflection in our posture in the quality of the tone that we're able to produce from the instrument. So if I'm sitting in the back of my chair and my instrument's down here, I'm not giving the best shot at vibrating and ringing if I'm down here. If I'm holding it parallel, my posture's tall, the instrument's going to ring better because I'm letting it ring better. So our posture is really important. And I can see shoes, you know, if you wear heels, to be honest, I like to wear flats because I feel more grounded and I feel taller and grounded. I don't wear heels to work on a day-to-day basis. And so when I'm in performance, heels personally, I think look very sharp from the audience. So depending on the concert, I'll wear heels if I really want to, you know, project a certain, you know, it looks sharper. But when you sit and your feet go up, your heels go up, it changes your center of balance.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're holding a violin, you're basically, I mean, it would be like if my phone was a 5-pound weight or however much weight, and you put your arm out and you're going to hold that for an hour. That's a really long time to hold this pose. Posture is really important. I actually, this is kind of interesting, along with shoes, Professor Flavin's going to laugh at me because here, I'm going to show you. There are specific chairs called cello chairs.
Yeah.
And the back of the chair, instead of being flat, so here are the legs and you're sitting this way, the back of the chair is actually like this.
Oh.
So that your hips are forward and the back of the chair is taller than the front of the chair.
Oh, I see.
And those are, yeah, and a lot of call them cello chairs because cellists are particularly picky about their posture because they have this big instrument, they have to reach around. So for me, it's the shoes, but I have these little, they're like furniture risers, you know, so if you wanted to lift that up 3 inches, you buy stuff like this, you put this under the feet of the bed.
Yeah.
And I actually put these in under the back two legs of the chair, just the back two, because then the chair will go like that and my posture is more forward and my feet are flat and I have never had real injuries from playing, no tendonitis, stuff like that. And I think it's because I really feel like it's because of body awareness and always playing with great posture.
I think you should brand it now and sell it.
Yeah, I guess I could. I mean,
you heard it.
It's
sorry,
true.
all the violinists, you've heard it here first. You have to get those.
Yeah,
Get those.
It's like these are 3-inch. They might be 4-inch. Yeah, if you go to Amazon, you put in like furniture risers. You'll see all this.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, because you depending on what orchestra you're playing or what gig you're doing, you show up and there's, you know, you show up to an orchestra rehearsal or, you know, the chairs are really small or they're those metal folding chairs. You never know what chair, unless you're playing with a really big orchestra with a huge budget and they have their own set of chairs on that stage, which is always, it's like my dream. It's so nice when that happens. But for the majority of the time, I can't control what chair, you know, whatever orchestra rehearsal. So I take these and when I bump the back of the chair up, my back, no matter how not great of a chair is provided, I don't have back pain as long as the back of the chair is elevated.
Well, that actually makes sense that you do that because, like you say, if you spend so much time on that chair, it needs to be the right position. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about this now. Because
I mean, you should do it at home if you're sitting at the desk. You know, even just sitting at the computer desk, you know, it puts the weight in your hips the weight in your hips gets shifted. So
Mm.
if I don't have the back of my chair elevated, I get very serious back pain. But as long as my body is shifted this way, I can play 6 hours of orchestra a day and not be injured.
Amazing. But it's these little things that I never knew this. And actually, this violinist that I spoke to said he would love to play barefoot because he feels so much more grounded when he stands, And but of course, we spoke about his shoes, and I really didn't realize. But all these little small things that everybody has, what they wear and what they, conductors, what they say. So I find it so interesting. That's why I always ask.
Yeah, everybody has their thing. That for me is, I have two things. That's one of them. The other thing is that actually I think Kim Kashkashian, I think, was one of the great viola pedagogues, used to teach this, but I actually, when I play violin, I never, ever, ever wear jackets like this or shirts that come all the way up. Because when violin sits on my shoulder, it drives me up the wall if there's cloth between the instrument and my shoulder. Yeah. So I buy most of my wardrobe, definitely concert clothes, but my even everyday wardrobe is centered on the idea of, is it stretchy material so that I can pull it off my shoulder enough so that the shoulder rest can go on. I for me have to feel the shoulder rest of the instrument on my actual skin. I feel the vibrations. I really hate when cloth slips under your instrument. So I usually play, a little bit like this, and then I set my instrument right here on my skin.
Well, if you have to wear a jacket for orchestra, then you can still just pull it away.
Yeah, I haven't had orchestra require a jacket about 2010. I mean, I guess you technically could fold it off. It doesn't look from the audience. I don't normally. Where for presentations, I'll wear a nice jacket. For orchestra concerts, I try to find really nice black cardigans that are really flowy, that have a lot of give. They're not very super fitted. They have a lot of sheen, shine, sparkle, that type of thing. But they're very flowing so that it's not stuck here.
That's interesting. But I can understand what you say, that you feel the vibration then on your skin. That I can totally and not that I play the violin, but I can understand where you're coming from that point of view. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always drives me just crazy, and then I just got to the point where I just accept that that's just how I work. And some of my friends, it doesn't bother them. They can, Professor Flavin will wear a jacket and put his violin on top of a fully folded jacket collar. I can't. And then have to wear in concerts, been to wear, jackets. And I've seen some men take out the shoulder pads in their expensive suits and stuff, because it changes everything. It drives
Well, that makes you unique. So if you do it that way, then it's Well, I mean, you can also, in that sense, I spoke to a female conductor, and we were saying that there should be a designer out there that listen to all the musicians and do all these, listen to all these requirements and then design something for. So I can imagine you'll always have an off-shoulder.
Pretty awesome. Yeah. There's a company that makes men's dress shirts, and they're very expensive, but they are the perfect type of material that stretches, and there is stuff like that for men,
Yeah.
But I haven't done anything for women. Maybe that's what I should start.
Yeah. Well, I would say the off shoulder range we will call Kristin.
Yeah. That's right. Along with the these.
Oh, I just see a business coming up here. So,
Yeah.
but listen, and when you're not playing the violin and not teaching, what did you have hobbies? Is there something you like doing?
Yeah, I grew up horseback riding,
Yeah.
and I did local horse shows, English hunter jumper,
Mm.
and I got away from it probably around my mid-20s. My trainer passed away. The barn I was working at went bankrupt. I moved off to college and was off to other things. So I actually recently just got back into horses, and
Mm.
yeah, and here in organization called SPCA.
Mm.
What is it? The Society of Prevention of Cruelty for Animals,
Oh.
or something like that.
Mm.
And here in Florida, they actually have one of the largest horse sanctuaries in the United States, which
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I have a day off now, usually on Sundays I have the day off, and I volunteer out of the horse SPCA here in Florida, because I just love being around the animals, and all of the horses at this barn have been either rescued or cases of neglect or abuse, or they're horses that are senior citizens, or they always have a handful of thoroughbreds that are they got their racing careers over, and so they'll take these thoroughbreds in and rehabilitate them to be regular, someone's horse that they can ride, not
Yeah.
on it. So yeah, I do that in my free time.
Amazing.
It's been very rewarding. I am so exhausted, and I'm so dirty by the time I get home, and it's always my one day off, but I don't care. I feel so rejuvenated after being outside with horses. So
Yeah. But that's great that you can do that, because I think it's needed. I think that's things that, when we do things like that, and it just replenish the soul a little bit to get going again and do the rest.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's very, I mean, it's a lot of manual labor, but it's so rewarding, and I just
Really?
it fills my inner cup back up.
Blessing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was so lovely to talk to you, and so wonderful to hear what you are doing, and that you're working with Scott. He's such a lovely guy. I've challenged him to a run. When he's coming to Vienna, he's bringing his running shoes. So just remind him of that.
Well, I have a reminder as a TA. I keep a list of things that next time I see Professor Flavin, I need to remember to ask him this. So I'll put it on my list.
And all the best with your teaching and your studies. And whenever you come to Vienna, you don't have to run with me, but we can have a coffee if you want.
That would be awesome. I've been to Vienna once, and
Really?
it is so beautiful. I just such a beautiful city. Yeah.
So whenever you visit, let me know.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. So, and keep in touch. If there's some interesting project that you want to talk about in the future, let me know. I'm always interested in, talking about these things and talking about projects, because I think it's wonderful if people know what's going on around the world.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Kristin. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nighttime there, I guess.
Yeah.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.